Welcome back to the Uncharted podcast. We're back to finish up this two-part series talking about social media, its dangers, and so much more. We left off on a cliffhanger. We left off with not telling you the good. We kind of talked about a lot, and today we're going to wrap up the series of this part two of social media and the dangers. So let's jump right into it.
Yeah, I think it's important that we look at both sides with the pros and cons of this certain topic because give us a it will give us a bigger picture to look at, and we can weigh what we're talking about from both sides and come to a conclusion. And so we've talked about what social media causes our human nature to do and what social media is designed for. So now here we are. We're going to talk about what good can come out of social media. There's a lot of Christian organizations out there that use it, churches use it, and people on a personal level like to post biblical content. And so what can we say about that? People can get saved from social media, right? And so what would you say to somebody who says, Yaro, well, if social media is that bad, how come I can't start an organization and it's a ministry coming out of our church and we want to use social media to promote our ministry?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. There's going to be people watching this who are going to be like waiting for a response on what do these guys or what does someone think, people of ministry doing, what do they think about this, right? I feel like let's unpack that a little bit. So the good. What is good? What is the intent? What is the goal? I think is where I'd start. So if we're talking about social media, which is a tool created for bad, and we're turning it around and say, listen, there's a right way to do this. I've cracked the code, like, hey, you can save people in the bar. So we need to go evangelize at the bars. Is that the best way to spread the gospel? Mm-hmm. To get people when they're half drunk? Like,
yeah.
There's better ways to evangelize. There's better ways to promote. Mm-hmm. If I believe that Instagram, social media as a whole, Facebook, I think I would digress a little bit on YouTube, because YouTube is more of content creation. It's more of a episode. It's more of a like someone can watch a church service and they missed it because they were ill, or that has been definitely one of those things where people kind of have skipped church just to watch it online, sit on the sofa. But I think when we're talking about social media in the terms of Instagram, Facebook, even some churches with TikTok and stuff, I feel like there's a fine line of what we have to cross, and I feel like there's better tools and ways to reach people than social media.
I think before we talk about ministries or churches, large organizations using social media for putting out biblical content, let's look at somebody who's on a personal level, on their personal profile, who wants to put out a Bible verse once a week, for example, or whenever something really sticks out, let me put that on my story. Because when I saw somebody put a Bible verse on their story, great, it's good, it's great. I didn't see it coming, but later it made me realize that what people's reaction is to that, you just never know, of course, but people aren't seeking for that on social media. If you really want scripture, you don't go to social media because I'm waiting for so-and-so to post their verse. I wonder what it's going to be. You just go to the Bible, and that's where you get your intake of God's word, and not that, but it's. I don't want people to think that that's the reason why we shouldn't put a verse on a story. So
I think it's I think it's intent. I feel like I know people who post great spiritual content, personal people, so not organizations, people who post great content on their stories, about passages that opened up to them. And it's literally just coming from their heart. They just want to share more. They would talk to you about these verses if they were talking to you, and they also talk about it online. And they're helping other people in that circle to see, hopefully knowing that that person is not there for spiritual content, but the hope that they might cross that as they're on social media to go look at whatever, or go judge, or go want something, yet they fell across your story and it kind of made them think. Because the Holy Spirit can work in any place, right? Most people, when you come and you start talking to them about Jesus, they didn't go to college to hear about Jesus. For example, like just say universities, right? Yet there you are having a conversation with them about Jesus. But their intention to go to college wasn't to learn about Jesus, but yet there are a lot of people who are saved in colleges, in universities, in just the park, as long as we're sharing that. So I feel like social media has given people a way to share more of Jesus, but I'd say go back to the heart's intent. If the person is trying to do this for a self-righteous cause, then you're very much like a Pharisee, which that's what the Pharisees were. If they had Instagram, the Pharisees would be, the ones with the check marks, the ones that are verified, the ones with millions of followers, because they were the ones who were official, right? And we know why they did what they did. So there are people within the Christian world that do things for the wrong reasons. And I think that there's more to social media than just, is it bad or good? I feel like there's intention is a big key of how you utilize a tool.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned how can someone get saved by seeing something on social media, and 100% if there's a church service that has been put on there and the gospel happened to be shared and it touched someone's heart, God can use that.
Yeah.
There's no limit to what God can do through something like that, but it doesn't justify the platform. Just because something good came out of something, God can do that, but it doesn't justify the platform. For example, someone can get saved at a casino. Someone can get saved at a bar. I don't know how. We don't have to speculate on what happened there, but it can happen. But it doesn't justify where it happened. It doesn't make casinos or bars okay. And so someone might disagree with this, but I would apply that to social media because of what we talked about in the first episode. There's so much bad happening coming out of social media that I wouldn't want to use it. But the people who are using it, may God use that as He wills. But with the knowledge that we have, I'm not going to intentionally say, well, okay, let's oversee all the terrible things that come out of it and just do our thing on social media. I don't see it that way.
Well, I think when it comes to with just social media in general, with organizations, we live in an interesting period of time where we grew up in this. We don't know the outcome per se until kind of we're seeing the results, fruit of the labor, so to say, years down the road. Like, is a church organization Instagram beneficial or not? What is it really doing for the members? Is it taking people away from the focus of Jesus, or is it helping people come to Jesus? Where are the stats? Right? So I think a lot of organizations will say, well, yeah, it's very beneficial.
But is it necessary?
Yeah, but they might say, is beneficial? Look how many followers we have. How many church members are serving in ministry and coming to services and love Jesus? Like, if you look at the followers compared to people who are devout Christians and actually serving, those numbers are going to be different. So some organizations might look at it as like, oh, it's beneficial because look at the numbers. But I think the numbers are very skewed. I feel like with the likes and followers and views, that's very skewed of how much success you've actually done for the kingdom. How much have you furthered the kingdom? Or are you it just makes it look like you are, that false front.
Yeah. For thousands of years, the church has functioned very well without the platform that social media provides. And so it's safe to say that it's not necessary, but can it be used? Of course. Should you? There's a passage in the Bible that says, don't cast your pearls before the swine. If we were to apply that to this situation, because of everything that social media has to offer, I don't want to put my content on there, because now I'm promoting the idea that I want a young person to get on social media because of my content on there. Well, if they get on social media, they're not just going to run into your content. They're going to run into all the bad stuff. And we want to keep them away from all of that. That's what scares me, is that we have so many young people getting on social media thinking that it's okay, and someone might get a pornography addiction because of social media.
Yeah.
It plants a seed, gets curiosity, and
More than a seed.
And you know what else can happen? They can also be there are predators out there who use social
Yes.
media platforms for this very reason too. That's why, as a parent, you need to be very cautious about having your child on a social media platform for that reason as well. But now, that should have been talked about in the first episode, because now we're talking about other bad things that we didn't talk about.
Which is fine. It
earlier.
kind of relates the whole story together.
But it just goes to say that because of all of that, I know churches that don't use social media for that reason. And of course, we know a lot of churches that do use social media, but do they talk about these things? I'm not sure. But I definitely know some churches that don't use social media.
Let me ask this. The invention of paper, good or bad? I mean, I'm not going to go, it's not a rabbit hole, like going off topic, but I just kind of
No, this is good.
thought about it. The invention of paper in itself furthered the kingdom, because we were able to print the Bible and give it out to so many souls, right? We spread the gospel with the paper. However, that same paper was used wrongfully, and the Bible was skewed, and it was rewritten in different, there's so much bad that came out of paper.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of paper was like the first social media. Like, if we're thinking about social media, what it does is it expands off how fast you can get information out.
Yeah. That's a good argument for somebody from our audience who would say, why? Obviously, we cannot blame the tool for the bad that comes out of it. Somebody might use paper to gossip, or write an evil note to someone, or a terrible letter, and that does not make paper bad.
Right.
But this is what we're doing to social media in this discussion, right? Because social media is having, terrible writing on this paper. Now this paper is bad. Now social media is bad. Well, here's what I would say to that is let's put. I like to put things on that scale that I mentioned in the first episode. That if it's that bad, if that's what people are really using it for, mostly the majority, which that's the case, most of the world is using a lot of social media for self, and it causes even our Christian brothers and sisters to fall. That's the majority. I think that's a red flag enough to say, let's stray away from this one. Okay? But paper in itself is a little bit more innocent, because it's just paper, and you can use it, and it's just a tool.
You put it on a scale.
Yeah. And some people might not like the scale, but it helps me to see if it's worth it or not. And to me, it's not worth it to risk myself, my children, to use this platform.
Would you say that it depends which social media platform? Or would you put them all in
I think that can definitely be a totally different discussion on somebody who wants to dissect these specific platforms and see how they function and all that, look at the differences, and maybe come to a determination where one might be safer than the other. And that doesn't interest me as much. Maybe that might interest somebody else who wants to allow their children to have some kind of social media. Let's decide which one is at least safer than the other. But that probably could be the case. But I don't see that right now.
Would you also say there's an age that social media would be safer or more good?
I wouldn't put age in that as a factor, because you and I both know that there are men our age that act like 15-year-old teenagers, And there are 15-year-old teenagers that act mature than you and I probably. So I wouldn't put age in that factor. I would put level of maturity, which how do you measure level of maturity, right? That can be taken into account by culture, and so that. But that's a good question. I would put it this way: that our human nature does not change anything. It is not changed by your age or maturity, because human nature is human nature. Our sinful nature, more specifically, is just our sinful nature. You can't get around that. You are in a certain situation, it's so easy to lust. You can't get around that. That's just our human nature. And now we put ourselves on a certain platform and give the devil an avenue to get to us, and then we fall, and then surprise. Well, not really, because that's just your human nature. Yeah. And now we can blame you because you put yourself on that platform, on that social media. And so why not just avoid it altogether?
So what would you say for the Christian, Jesus-loving person who is listening to this, is using social media like I am, but has business-related content more than, like, so for example, they have an Instagram page. Mm-hmm. It's their name, whatever. And they post things that they do for work on there. They post sometimes, whatever it may be that they post. And every now and then they post some Christian content as well. Mm-hmm. Not to say that they're using the platform to expand the gospel per se. That's not the focus. But to help people in the unchristian world be able to see their life, what they do. Like, so someone buys a home through me. Yeah. And they might not believe in Christ. They might not be a Jesus follower. They might not want to have anything to do with religion even because of whatever past they might have. Yet they see your life as an example of the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Mm-hmm. And they begin to see and ask questions of, so why? Well, so you go to church? Like, I've brought some people who were not churchgoers to church before. I'm not saying through social media, but because people have kind of seen your life overall, whether it's on purpose or not, because sometimes they don't see your life every day. They're not your coworkers, but they kind of see your life from a standpoint, and social media being one of those streams of sources, more to say, of how you do life. Yeah. So for the person who is a Christian, but is not using social media as a tool per se, but it's just showing their life on their part of their life, maybe some good, some of the hard times as well, to help promote both business, personal, and life as a whole. Mm-hmm. What about that?
This is a good transition to another good thing that can come out of social media is my business functions on social media, and I need social media in order for my business to have success. This is how it's always been, and I love talking about business. You have a few businesses of your own, and so you can speak more on this than I can. But if your business rises and falls on social media, I would say that that's pretty unstable business.
I would agree.
If Coca-Cola dropped all of its social media platforms today, would they go out of business?
Why?
Absolutely not. They have plenty of ways that supports their business. And so if you can find a way to be a little bit more stable, that's great. But you can't get around the fact that it's not a good idea to limit your business to just its presence on social media. Now, for the purpose of this discussion, if everybody were to agree with us and say, okay, let's not be on social media, and everybody is now not there, and what does that do to the business? Then it doesn't help the business, because if nobody's on social media, then so it does come to this circular issue of now the businesses won't have any success since everyone is not on social media because of how bad it is. I understand that, but again, if you're limiting your business to just social media, then that's a problem on its own.
I agree.
So, but there is a way to have business content and have it not be moral, because there's a way to promote something in a way that's just to clickbait, just to get you hooked, just to waste your time. If I'm doing that to someone, I wouldn't say that God would appreciate that, because you're purposely trying to waste someone's time or get them addicted or to fool them in such a way just to gain your business, just because you care about money.
Yeah.
I can't name one specific thing, but I've felt that way so many times being on social media, just from someone's company or business, their advertising, or someone's personal profile who they're promoting someone's. They do it in such a way that's just annoying, or, like I said, waste your time, just trying to get you hooked. All they care about is the money. And when that happens, no, not very good things come out of that.
Yeah. I think it does go back to the user intent of why we do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we all kind of go deeper and analyze why we use social media, how we use it, and when we use it, a lot of these questions are just answered by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If everyone watching this kind of is like, why do I use social media? And it's honest with themselves. I think a lot of people would be like, well, yeah, I probably need to start using it less.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't you? Right?
Yeah.
It's a hook. And so that's why we implement things like taking Instagram off the phones and seeing how different life is like that.
Yeah.
Like I have businesses on Instagram. I'm on social media, right? However, I'm not addicted to scrolling and using.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I haven't noticed that in the past where it's like, oh, it's an issue. And we talked about that in the first episode, but doing certain things, not having an Instagram on here, but having it on my tablet, for example, and just to go and look at messages and respond to people and post content every now and then, is a different use scenario than that of which whenever there's a free minute, you check Instagram. You check Facebook, I need to go respond to my Be Real, my TikTok, my whatever, my Snapchat. Oh, I have like 10 notifications. I turn notifications off. I have messages and my emails are the only notifications that are on. And it's because social media, when it pops up as a notification, even your favorite YouTubers, oh, watch it real quick. And by the time you watched it, you just lost all productivity. Maybe you were reading the Bible even.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you were working on a message. Maybe you were having a conversation with someone and you totally just threw that down the drain because, a notification for social media.
That's especially the case when you use the Bible on your phone.
Yeah, I'm anti that.
Yeah, you use the paper Bible, guys. That paper is a great tool.
That paper is a great tool, and the thing about that paper in particular is, you put notes. You know exactly. You remember where passages are located in that Bible.
Yep.
And you come and you're like, oh, I know where that is. And someone might say, you can do highlights in the Bible on the app. What happens when your phone gets damaged? Oh, I have an account. What happens if you, so you're saying the app is perfect and that no crashes can ever happen to it. What happens? Oh, well, you can lose a Bible as well, right? But the argument, there's, again, the scale.
Yeah, it's just a tool. Use the right tool for the job.
Yeah.
Use good discernment. And for me, so the phone always deters me away to something else very easily, and so I'd stray away from that. But we talked about some aspects of social media from a secular standpoint. Another secular idea to social media that came to mind is, I remember watching a TED Talk on social media, and someone talked about how social media is not good for you from a secular standpoint. They mentioned nothing about God. It was purely just their studies, ideas, what studies have shown, and they presented kind of their lifestyle, how it's been so far. So even people from the world are telling us how bad social media is. And so you don't need to just argue from a spiritual standpoint to understand that this is bad for you. It's just naturally bad for you.
Yeah. The design.
Mm-hmm. And so I don't know. There's a lot to.
I want to
unpack
add
here.
to say with the good of not having social media on your phone is you beginning to be alert of everything around you. You begin to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
real conversations with people because you're not
Mhm.
looking at your phone. You're like,
Yeah.
you're standing in line. You're like, oh, how are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Just being more human, just being more of a person. If we're talking about if we're talking about a secular standpoint of should we use Instagram or not, or should we use social media or not, the dangers, and you begin to see the world very different when you're not on that phone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But most people don't have the control to not be on the phone.
Yeah.
People say, well, I can limit it. I'm not gonna use it all the time. But the reality is the more it's accessible, the more you're gonna be using it.
Yeah.
Because we're humans.
Mm-hmm.
We're humans.
Mhm.
And so I think there's things we could do to utilize it correctly.
Yeah. And Yaro, we talked a lot about using social media from an organizational standpoint, from a church, a ministry, from business. All of that I can agree, can be a gray area. But there's one thing that is a lot more difficult to argue is that the point of this discussion is the use of social media from a personal standpoint. You know, you and me, each individual listening to this right now, that's where it hurts. That's where the devil's trying to get us. You know, because we can go make a lot of circles with people who want to push social media through business and church. Let's put that aside, and I want our audience to really understand that. Think of your relationship with God, you and yourself. What are you doing on social media that's straying you from God? And that I think that brings us to perfect time to come to a conclusion for our audience and give them some options of what can be done to have better discernment in their spiritual walk with Christ. And we can agree that sin is a heart issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd say we give them two options. Either don't use social media at all, which is a hard thing to do. I remember being in that position. Or use it with enough discernment to glorify God. And that's all I can give you. And that second one is that could be a tough one because, again, there goes back to our human nature. How much discernment do you need to make sure you're not falling in your social media? So, Yara, if you have anything else to add on to that,
Yeah, that's good.
I think that's all I have to say at this point.
I have one thing to add just because you just mentioned that, and I just talked about this with a couple people at our church and talking about how much discernment to have.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a passage in the Bible that just comes to my mind, James 1:5.
Mm.
And, the question of how much discernment or how much, James 1:5. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him. Having enough wisdom can only come from God. Having that discernment can come from God only. Like, you are not in the position to be able to control how much you can use this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the discernment and the wisdom, I think that when you start to grow in wisdom, you start to grow in the presence of God, you begin to want to live a different lifestyle. And you don't like, oh man, I have to give up social media.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're just like, you're naturally not pulled to it. You're like, I don't care for that.
Yeah, it's
Or
become the
that's
norm.
not where I go to
Mm-hmm.
get my, excitement for the day. Your lifestyle changes when your life changes with God.
Yeah. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life."
Yes.
And so, if we can do a better job of guarding our heart through as many avenues as we can by eliminating certain things like social media, I think that'll just do us a great service on helping guard our heart from the evil things of this world.
I agree.
So,
What a way to end it.
Yeah,
That's good.
I hope that our audience will take this in maybe little by little, and we're not saying that we're right on everything,
Right.
but and that you have to agree on everything. But we're just two guys having a conversation about what God has done in our lives.
Right.
So do what you will with this information.
Yeah, well, I pray that this helps other people that have been maybe pondering on the topic, thinking about this topic, bouncing them back and forth with cleanses, social media cleanses or whatnot, and hopefully this gives you a little bit more clarity to the watchers. So thanks again for watching. Just if this helped you at all, leave a comment, tell us how it blessed you, or share with another friend who is in that same boat. Until next time. Part three.
A good thing that can come out of social media is like using it for contacting with family that are from abroad. In my family, we keep in touch through certain ways like that as well.
You're telling me you Snapchat your family members?
maybe not. Even though Snapchat is the easiest way to get a video going, click send to a certain someone or the certain group chat. It's great to be able to do it that fast. But if we're gonna come to an agreement like what we just discussed, I think that's like that's a touchy subject. My family is gonna hate me now.
You're gonna watch this. I'm gonna put this is definitely going in now.
I would prefer a different platform because
like Telegram.
Send me an email.
I prefer a letter with handwriting. Man, people can't even handwrite things anymore. Have you seen people's handwriting? They're like, wait, how do you write?
Like, oh, you have beautiful cursive. It's not cursive.
AI.
Oh.
Siri. I use Siri to contact my family. AI generated content.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Part 3. AI. Yes or no? Should you use ChatGPT in writing your sermons? I'm just kidding. Controversial. I'm just kidding. But can we fact check your notes here, ChatGPT transcript?
Yeah.
No, that looks like paper. We're good. We're good.
Oh, you know what we forgot to talk about is
What?
preaching the gospel through social media.
No, we talked about it.
Yeah.
Just not in a sense of
There's some
actually doing
things.
sermons.
There's some things I didn't get to say concerning that, which is fine. Yeah. Because what I was gonna say is, if you're gonna preach the gospel and you want to use social media, well, let's go back to the original. How was it meant to be in the first place? And how it was meant to be is Jesus said, "Go and preach."
You mean people didn't use phones?
Precisely. So if you're trying to use social media as like the replacement to preaching, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Not in the long term. It can be used as a helpful side tool, but it's just not going to replace preaching whatsoever. If you are too lazy or not have enough faith to go to a third world country to preach the gospel, and so you think social media is going to replace it, it's not going to work.
Nope.
No way. I'm very confident people have tried that in the past and failed, maybe had some successes, but in the end, it's just not going to replace as a missionary to go somewhere and interact with people and preach the gospel the way it was meant to be. So bad argument.
Yeah. I know. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Paper it is. Face to face.